You're listening to Golden River Underground, Session 11. This is a Delta Green campaign, adapted from Music from a Darkened Room and Artifact Zero, both by Dennis Detweiler. Enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Session 11, is that right?
That is correct.
Yes.
Of Golden River Underground. It is Sunday, October 8th, 1995. It is the evening, and when we left off, I think Tim Bars was at the police station, not free to go. You are, in fact, you were being detained, now you're under arrest. And Simon, what was Simon up to? Go ahead.
Simon had gone to the newspaper, the Gazelle, in order to reveal the goings-on and the FBI interference that he was anticipating based on what the chief had told him. He had given all the information he had and a lot of evidence over to the newspaper, and then he was in the process of trying to find a lawyer.
Right, which you were doing in another office. You just went into an open office in the Gazelle building.
Correct.
And you've been dialing around trying to find someone.
Yeah, and then you said that Tim had managed to connect with a lawyer on the phone from the police station, and then we ended the session.
Yes, so Tim, I think we agreed that Tim was calling based on a jingle that he remembered from...
Yep, that's all I got.
Some local law at some DUI lawyer or... all right, so right now... Tim, you're standing in the hallway of the police station. There aren't that many people around. The two FBI agents, a man and a woman, have you don't know where they are. They're not in the hallway with you. The chief himself is standing behind you. And have you ever really talked to the chief at length before?
No, I think I would recognize him. I would, if I ran into him at the store, I would say, "Oh, that's the chief." But we wouldn't have ever had any real discussions about anything.
So he's a stern, bearded man. He's got kind of a hard gym teacher vibe. One of those old school gym teachers. And after you hang up, having successfully contacted some local lawyer, and they basically just took down your details and said that someone was on their way. The chief looks at you and says, "All right, listen. I know you're friends with Simon, and what's going on here is strange. So here's what I'm going to tell you. By all means, take your lawyer in there into the interview room, but I'm going to be watching as well, and I'm going to make sure this doesn't go sideways on you. Understand?"
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So, I just follow my lead. I'm not going to let them jam you up. I will cut it off if it goes that way. But it may be better for you to be forthcoming. And you just need to... You got to trust me that I won't let this go sideways on you. You understand?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. And he sort of sighs and says... You need a cup of coffee, cigarette, anything?
No, I'm good.
All right. And with that, he says, "Okay, I'm gonna cuff you again. It's really more for show. All right."
Yeah.
And he cuffs you, and then puts you in front of him and has his hand on your shoulder, and starts walking you down the hall. And down the hall, you can see that they have their, interview rooms, their interrogation rooms. And he opens the door and moves you into the room. So it's a pretty plain room. There's a window on the hallway side that you can't see through from the inside. And in the middle of the room, there's lighting overhead, and there's a plain metal table with a couple of chairs around it. And he motions for you to sit down in one of the chairs.
All right. I'll slide in.
And then you hear footsteps coming down the hall, and he ducks outside and says, agents, we're in here. And they both walk in and shut the door. So you're looking at a man and a woman. They're, both about average height. The man, he's a little older, maybe like 40-ish, salt and pepper hair, clean shaven, round face, blue eyes. The woman, so she's wearing a black pantsuit. She has like shoulder-length brown hair. Seems athletic. She has like very sharp features. And the guy stays standing up. So you're seated at the table. The chief is standing back in the corner of the room behind you. And as the detectives come in, he moves to a corner that you can see. The male FBI agent and the female FBI agent both sit down across from you.
All right.
And the woman says, I'm Special Agent McRae, and this is Special Agent Jackson, and we're here to ask you a few questions. Are you in a mood to cooperate with us now?
You can ask whatever you want.
She nods and says, I understand that there's a lawyer on the way, and you know that you don't have to say anything. You have the right to remain silent, but this will go a lot easier for everyone if you just tell us what we need to know. And she looks at her partner and then looks back at you, and she has a briefcase that she opens it. She opens up and she pulls out 2 glossy photos and slides them over to you. And you can see that they are pictures. It looks like official, like professional pictures with the flag behind and everything of the 2 men you had interacted with before, like the 2 agents that held you up.
Yep.
And she says, "Do you recognize either of these men?"
I do. I think I am going to wait for that lawyer.
And the chief behind the agents nods at you. And she lets out kind of an exasperated sigh and runs her hand through her hair and says, "Look, there's nothing incriminating about that. I just want to know if you recognize these men."
And you will find that out when my lawyer arrives. If this is all above board, then you have no reason to object to there being a lawyer in the room.
She stands up and starts pacing, and then says, "I'm going to go get a cup of coffee," and walks out, shuts the door behind her.
I eye the remaining guy, Jackson, right? It was McRae and Jackson?
Yep.
Okay. And
he's stone-faced.
Yeah, so it's little discouraging that your partner seems to be upset by the prospect of a lawyer being present.
He looks at you. He turns very slowly and looks at you and says, "We don't have a lot of time.
Well,
and this is costing us more."
Okay. That really makes me want to put my neck out there to help you after you arrested me.
He looks a little contrite, gives kind of a half shrug and says, "It didn't have to go down like that."
I disagree, but I guess here we are, so I'm going to play it the way that obviously makes sense, and you can be annoyed if you want, but I don't think you can really reasonably claim that what I'm doing doesn't make sense. I have every incentive to want a lawyer in the room.
Look, we got a job to do. Okay, we're not interested in you. We need to know some things. It's for public safety. I don't know what else to say. And so we'll wait for your lawyer, and then he lets out a long exhale and just says, why don't you exercise your right to remain silent for a little while?
What a wonderful idea.
A few minutes go by, and the chief is sipping coffee from a mug, and he's a slurper in the back of the room. There's a lot of... and so that goes on for a little while. and then there's a knock on the door, and the chief walks out, and then he comes back in with a man that's in a gray suit. He's wearing a tie. You recognize him as the man from the ad you saw on the billboard, the DUI lawyer.
Excellent.
The guy looks around, sees the agent, sees the chief, and you, and then says, "I'd like a few minutes to confer with my client, please." And they both nod and walk out of the room wordlessly. With that, he listens for a second at the door, and then pulls a chair out, sits down across from you, and then reaches out across the table to shake your hand. You're still in handcuffs.
Yep. Am I behind the back cuffed, or am I...
No. Your hands are out on the table. They're not chained to the table.
So I do what I can to move my left hand out of the way so I can... It's a little awkward because, I'm still all bandaged up as well.
True.
So the handcuffs do not help things.
So he's
when I'm looking at this guy, how much of an FBI plant vibe do I get?
You don't get that idea at all.
Okay.
Give me a human check.
Oh, humans. Let me tell you something that I don't have much of.
Unless you want to try a firearms check. At disadvantage because you don't have a firearm.
All right. Oh, okay. The one looked like a 4. It's a 41. For a second, I thought it was a critical fail. It's just a normal fail.
Okay. Tough for you to get a read on this guy. He's got you think a pretty good poker face. He's clean cut, short hair. He seems to you to be just kind of a slick looking lawyer type. You do not get the impression that he's a plant, but you also don't know if you'd want to have beers with the guy.
Okay, fair enough.
So he shakes your hand and says, "I'm Steve."
Hello, Steve. I'm Tim.
And he also has a little briefcase, and he pulls out a legal pad and a pen out of his pocket, and then he says, "All right, Tim, what are we doing here?"
Quick question.
He says, actually, before you answer that, he slides some paperwork over to you and says, "You need to sign this. This makes me your legal representation. That way, we'll have attorney-client privilege, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my rate."
I was about to ask that. I glance at the rate, and as long as it's not too exorbitant, I really have no choice. And I sign the paperwork.
All right. And we'll review how to pay for things in Delta Green later.
Excellent. Yeah, this is really going to cut into my down payment for the Spooner House.
Mm-hmm. That's all you can think right now. For the first time, you feel fear.
This is bad.
He takes that packet and says, "Excellent. All right. Now that that's out of the way, what are we doing here?"
So, good question. I haven't gotten a ton of detail from them. Here's what I do know. So they're FBI. I don't know if that was immediately obvious to you when you walked in. They are investigating, I guess. So are you familiar with, you may have heard recently, there was a dig site that was, recently there were some bodies found, and then it turned into a manhunt.
And he says, hold on, Tim. What do you do for a living? Let's get some basics out of the way.
Sure, I'm an engineer at Corvidian Tech. I work a lot on radar stuff.
All right.
So the college had me out at the out at this dig site recently. Did you hear about the hunt for Dr. Thorley, the search and rescue thing?
Yes, I read about that in the Gazelle.
Okay, so do you know kind of what led up to that? How there was a dig site that was being investigated with ground penetrating radar to make sure it wasn't like a historical site, because they were going to be doing some digging there.
Sure. I think I read something like that.
Okay, so I was the guy who was working with Corvidian / the college to do the ground penetrating radar to make sure we weren't messing with anything sacred. When we were out there, we did find a couple of things buried, and we were digging them up to make sure we understood what they were, and then 2 people who claimed to be FBI agents came to the site and tried to take it over. Because at that point it had been designated as a crime scene because there were bodies. And it eventually got to the point where they came in with guns, held people up, including me, and took whatever was in the ground out of the ground and walked away with it. But they were threatening to kill people, and they were claiming to be FBI agents. And these 2 fellas are, which by the way, when you walked in, there was only 1 agent, but there is actually a second. There's a woman named McCrae, who I don't know if you bumped into her on the way in. They came up to me this morning and said that they wanted to ask me some questions about those 2 individuals who were claiming to be FBI agents, and were very insistent that we do it someplace that wasn't public. I said that I wasn't comfortable doing that, and then they arrested me, and here we are. So, pretty weird. So,
talk to me about your interaction with the people they showed you the photos of.
So a lot of this, there's actually a buddy of mine who works on the police force who would be able to give you some additional context. His name is Simon Redding. He was also present for this. He was the one that they were talking with when they were initially trying to take over the investigation, claiming that it had somehow fell under federal jurisdiction. I think they said something ridiculous about mineral rights, or I don't quite remember what the context there was. But then when that got shot down, they walked away, and then later came back and just held people up at gunpoint and then took whatever it was they were trying to get at. It was one of the things that we identified with the ground penetrating radar. They came and they took it. So that seems to be the goal. Now, another aspect of this that I'm not as familiar with, but again, you should talk to Simon. There's another investigation that he's involved in, and the same pair of people also seems to be interfering with that as well. They were tampering with evidence. They were and they're like weirdly involved in multiple cases. It seems like where they're just committing a lot of felonies and doing it under the guise of being FBI agents. I don't know if they actually are. And now these guys are here and to talk about it.
Your friend Simon told you about this evidence tampering?
It was a case that actually kind of involved me anyway. It was an investigation into the suicide of a guy that I worked with. So,
all right.
But yeah, I don't know what these 2 guys are up to. If they are FBI, that's a big problem because they're stealing things and then threatening to kill people, which is not becoming of a federal agent. And and then these guys, I don't know what their plan is. I don't know what these 2 are up to. But they arrested me because I'm still not entirely sure why I'm currently
He puts his hand up at this stage and says, I apologize if I seem brusque, but we may not have that much time and I have a lot of ground I need to cover.
Yep, that's fair.
Have you ever been in trouble with the law, Mr. Bars?
No.
All right. You're not currently wanted for anything?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't see why I would be.
Do you believe that they have any reason to want to arrest you, incarcerate you?
I don't think so.
What happened really to your hand?
Oh, I burned it when I was cooking.
Okay.
I don't know if I need to make like a deception check for that.
Yeah,
maybe it's because am I living the lie so effectively that what would this be?
Persuasion.
Persuade.
Yeah.
Probably. Okay. I've got a 31 in persuade these days. I'm up 11% in persuade.
Wow.
And it is enough.
12.
Nope. 24.
Okay. He nods. You don't get the impression that he doesn't believe you. And he says, all right, last question before they come back in. What have you said so far to anyone since you had that interaction with the agents? I need to know every word that you said.
I mean, the gist of it is they're asking about those two, and they know that I do recognize them. And other than that, not really much has been discussed.
So you've not talked to anyone else?
No, I haven't really had the chance to. I mean, they dragged me here, and then I called you.
Make another persuasion check.
Okay.
So you are deliberately concealing your conversation with the chief?
But yeah, I don't want to put him like in a position where I'd prefer for him to remain to all. I mean, I don't know. I guess this guy's my lawyer.
Okay, so you say this to him, and he looks at you like, "Don't hold out on me. Don't be stupid."
All right. The chief has said that this also smells fishy to him, and he's basically said that he's in my corner to the extent that his job will permit, because he's also, you know, I mean, he probably knows more than I do as it concerns the other case, but like these two, maybe FBI, maybe not, guys are really messing with him as well, because it's his investigations ultimately that are being impacted by it. So
yeah. So Tim, have you ever heard of good cop, bad cop?
Yes, I'm familiar.
Okay. So I want you to ignore what the chief said. You only have one friend right now, and it's me, Steve.
It's Steve.
All right?
Sure.
So I'm going to let them back in, and here's how I think this is going to go. I don't think they want you for anything, based on what you've said, and I'm going to talk to them before I bring them back in to clarify whether or not you're actually being charged with anything. And after that, assuming I'm correct that they're not interested in you specifically, they just want to know some information, they're going to ask questions. Every time they ask a question, you are going to sit there silently. I'm going to nod at you, or I'm going to shake my head, or something. I'm going to make it crystal clear to you whether or not I want you to say something. And I want you to don't race. And if I start talking, you stop, because I'm here to make sure you don't get yourself into trouble. Understand?
Yep.
But if they're not interested in you and they want information, because I know what the rules are, my inclination is to just give them what they want so long as it doesn't incriminate you, and that way we can both get out of here and get back to dinner. Make sense?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to leave now. Talk to the chief, talk to the agents, and come back. But we'll take it slow and careful, and, you know, try to keep this as small as possible. All right?
Sounds like a plan.
You need anything? Water?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay. And he, puts his hand on your non-bandaged hand, and then stands up and walks out of the room.
This smells like it's going to be one of those unfortunate circumstances where Duncan has to roleplay a conversation with himself.
I'm going to try to get 6 or 7 people involved. It's true. I didn't know Tim liked Jack as a sovereign citizen. So, when a cop asks him a question, he just screams like, "Am I being detained?"
Well, they didn't ask me a question. They said, "Let's go somewhere where no one can see you, and then we're going to ask you the question."
So I will note that most law enforcement people don't talk about their investigations in public.
Right.
They don't do those those interrogations at McDonald's.
Yeah, this isn't, they're not doing like man on the street interviews for like the Tonight Show. But anyway,
I know my rights.
You know your rights.
I have a 0% in law.
You should have just shouted, "I'm not driving. I'm traveling."
Mm-hmm. We already made that joke.
Okay, so you can hear him conferring with other people outside the door, although it's muffled enough that you don't know what's being said.
All you hear is, "Oh yeah, he's a total rube. He told me everything."
Mm-hmm. you hear laughter. So you hear them conferring for a few minutes, and then the door opens, and all 4 people walk in. The 2 agents sit across the table from you. Steve pulls up the chair next to you and sits down, and kind of turns so it's very easy for you to see his face. And then the chief goes and stands in the corner back behind the agents, leaning up against the wall with his cup of coffee. And the chief's the last one in, and he shuts the door behind him. So once everybody's settled in, the female agent looks up to the chief and says, "Chief, do you mind uncuffing Mr. Bars? I don't think that will be necessary." And he nods and comes over and takes the handcuffs off you. Do you want to do one of those kind of movie style, like you rub your wrists, even though you've been in handcuffs for like a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I'm going to be really dramatic about it.
And he moves back into his corner, and she looks across the table at you and says, "Mr. Bars, we're not interested in you. There are a few things we want to know, and then we can all move on. I regret that we're having the conversation under these circumstances, and I'm willing to admit that I may have rushed in arresting you. However, I need to know what I need to know. So please just play ball with me, and after that you'll be free to go and we'll move on. All right?"
Uh-huh.
She takes the photos out again. She says, "Now, let's start over. Do you recognize these 2 men?"
Yes.
And your lawyer kicks you beneath the table.
They already know that.
And he's like, "Come on, man." So Special Agent McRae does not crack a smile. And she says, "Please describe the manner in which you met these men." And
I pointedly look at my lawyer.
He nods.
Yeah. So, while I was doing, in my professional capacity, since I work as an engineer at Corvidian Tech, and we partner with the college to do some investigations on ground penetrating radar, I was working in that capacity, investigating a potential dig site. And while we were doing that, we discovered a couple of, potential points of interest. Couple of very old, it looks like it was an old burial site. We found a few old bodies. But then we also found this odd metallic thing under the ground. And we were digging around it, trying to figure out what exactly it was. These 2 individuals tried to basically take over the dig site.
And how did they do that?
Well, they claimed that it was going to be a federal investigation because the bodies that had been found were underground, and they claimed that mineral rights somehow meant that they got to take over, or something to that effect.
A participant in this conversation or a witness to it?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think Tim was actually there for that conversation. No, I heard about it secondhand from the person who was from another officer.
Them secondhand?
No, I ran into them later. That was just the initial confrontation that led to the confrontation I had.
Your character was there for that, by the way.
I was there for that? Okay. Never mind. We're revising. Yes, I was there for that. And I recognize them based on that.
All right. Continue.
Okay. So, the arguments that they made to try to, assert their own authority over the site were found wanting by the local officials, and so they walked away from that one. But later they came back, and just and I kind of glance at my lawyer and with a look of apology say, held us up at gunpoint so that they could obtain this this thing that was buried in the ground. We're still not really sure what it was, but they wanted it enough to
Now,
threatened to kill us.
Please be as specific as you can. Who had the gun? Both of them? Who said what?
I mean, honestly, my memory's a bit fuzzy because it was a extremely stressful, less than a minute. But I don't remember who was holding the gun. It may be that they both had guns, but there was a gun at least pointed at me.
And you're positive it was these same men?
I am as confident as I can be without having photographic evidence of the encounter, yes.
Have you encountered these men before, Mr. Bars?
I'm trying to think if I personally have run into them any time other than those
Your lawyer
times.
kicks you again. And he looks at you like, dude, what the fuck? And he looks at the special agents and says, agents, what bearing could this possibly have on whatever case you're working? And they, the two agents look at each other and then look back at you and your lawyer. And the male agent, Jackson, says, it just seems strange to us that they would hold you up at gunpoint, and we want to make sure we have all the facts. Your lawyer shrugs and says, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I have personally run into these two any times other than the initial meeting where they tried to take it over, and then the second meeting where they took it over anyway by force. Those are my interactions.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check.
Pass.
Okay. All right.
I just want to jump in real quick to clarify. Does Tim not consider doing the zoom and enhance on the videotapes as an interaction, or is that just forgotten?
Well, that's why he had to make the check.
I wouldn't consider that to be an interaction with them. That's an interaction with like a picture of them.
Sure, and that's my question, was what's the interpretation?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's however he interpreted it. I mean, this isn't like a rules question. But anyway, I mean, that seems to satisfy them. And the agents look across at you and say, well, Mr. Bars, that's very helpful. And I'm afraid we've put you through quite a time tonight. So,
would you mind telling me what this is all about?
These two men are federal law enforcement officers that have been abusing their positions to commit a variety of crimes.
Okay, so they are actual FBI agents. I was curious.
Well, I'm not confirming that they're FBI agents. What I am telling you is that they are, or at least were, federal law enforcement, and now the Bureau is stepping in to apprehend these men.
Well, best of luck to you.
I would appreciate that. Or I would appreciate it if what I just told you, did not leave this room. The Bureau has no wish to further endanger or inconvenience the people that these men have already victimized. So I regret that we're having this conversation in this room, but we need to apprehend them.
Well, I guess as long as we're all apologizing, I should say I am sorry for making you go to these lengths. However, hopefully you can understand the last time somebody with an FBI badge was talking to me, they also had a gun in my face, so I was a little suspicious and kind of wanted to make sure that any conversation that did happen had witnesses.
Point taken. And, point taken. Now, what we could use from you is a list of the other people that were at the site. You said that you were not alone there at the dig site when these men held you up.
I look at my lawyer again.
He nods.
There were two lab assistants there as well. And I write down their names.
Okay. Yeah, so she pushes a pad of paper over to you, and you put the names down. And she says, and what about from the police force? Was anyone involved? I think you said initially they had a conversation with someone about taking over the investigation.
Yeah, at this point, I'm going to glance at the chief. My inclination is to just, we're going now, and I'll tell them what they want to know, but...
The chief nods.
Okay, yeah, his name's Simon Redding.
Well, and she,
She may recognize the name. He's been the one who's been trying to...
Well, when you look at the chief, he nods at you, and then you give the name. She turns around in her chair and looks between the chief and you, and says, like, she doesn't say anything, but you get the idea that she's figured out that there's some kind of communication going on between, or like the two of you are in cahoots somehow.
Well, I mean, surely this isn't surprising to her. But yeah, understood.
And so you give her Simon's name?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
I mean, there were various people from the university, and you can contact the archaeology department for a full list of like everybody on their end who was involved. But the people who would have actually interfaced with these two individuals, you basically got what you got.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bars.
Yeah. So am I good?
She writes down a phone number on the bottom of that piece of paper and tears it off and hands it to you and says, "If you remember anything else or see these men again, call this number right away."
Sure thing. Good luck in your investigation.
Her and her partner both stand up, look at the chief, look at your lawyer, and say, That's all we have for Mr. Bars. The FBI has no further interest in him." And then she says to the chief, "Chief, do you mind if I speak to you privately?" And with that, the other special agent looks at you and your lawyer and says, "No hard feelings." And he reaches across the table to shake your hand.
I will shake his hand and give my best attempt at kind of a sharp smile, which probably will not be very effective. Of course not.
And your lawyer looks at the chief, who nods at him, and he says, "I'll walk you out." And the chief says, "You can pick up your personal effects at the front desk."
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So, you walk up to the front, and there's a clerk there at the desk that has a tray that's got all of your stuff, your wallet and your keys and things like that. Tim Barr strikes me as a man who probably has fancy pens,
absolutely,
stuff like that. And Steve looks at you and says, "I'll give me a good phone number. I'll call you tomorrow, and we'll work out payment."
Sounds good. And I give him my home phone.
He nods and then claps you on the shoulder and says, "Next time, follow my instructions."
Yeah.
That
Hopefully
really could have
there
gone
is no next
sideways
time.
on you.
Yeah.
And he walks out the front door. And the clerk at the desk looks at you and says, "All right, sir, you're good to go."
Nice. I'm going to get all my stuff, and I'm going to go home and immediately try to call Simon.
Okay, so let's flip over to Simon. Simon has been at the office of the Golden River Gazelle you've been in that building. You've been in an unoccupied office, working through the phone book, trying to find a good lawyer. Mm-hmm. So what are you on the lookout for? Anything specific?
Well, as you had said last time, I would have some familiarity with the local talent.
Yes.
So I would probably be looking for not the accident or injury lawyers, but the lawyers that I have had some dealings with in the courtroom or in the interrogation rooms that seem like they had the best handle on these kinds of interactions.
Okay. And you probably have a police union lawyer.
Right, but as I indicated last time, that's probably not actually the person that I would want to rely on for something like this.
Right. Okay, so you're able to find a criminal defense attorney, someone who's more familiar with law enforcement.
Yeah.
But of course that's going to cost more money, and that's a more specialized high-end thing. Yeah, let's say you find a number that you think looks good for that, and you give them a call, and they arrange to have someone. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to head down to the station and like meet them right away, or?
No, I don't want to meet them at the station. I want to meet them at their office, if possible.
Okay. Let's come up with a good law firm name.
It's got to be something and something.
Right.
3 lawyers of King's Lawyers.
Crenshaw and
typically
Crothers.
Yeah,
Crenshaw
it's
and
always
Crothers,
just names.
perfect. Yeah.
All right. So you look around and then you're like, of course, Crenshaw and Crothers. They're not that far from the station. Some of your, some of the cases that you've brought to trial, or you've done the investigative work that's gotten them there. Donald Crenshaw has kept those guys out on the streets, much to your chagrin.
Donald Crenshaw is that's the kind of name where the moment they're born, you know they're going to be a lawyer.
So, when a clerk picks up the phone over there and you describe their case, or you describe your case, he tells you that Donald is in, and that if you come in now, he'll see you right away.
I'm on my way. So yeah, I head over there.
Okay. All right. So, their office is downtown, and it's like a nice old brick building, and the clerk kind of waves you on through and points you to a corner office. You knock, and a voice tells you to enter, and it's exactly what you would. It's like almost a cartoon lawyer's office. Big bookshelves with leather-bound books, and Donald himself is sitting in a high-backed chair, not by his desk but near a fireplace, and he has one of those globe table things that has you pop the globe open and it's got decanters and glasses and stuff, and he is sipping on something expensive looking, and he gestures for you to sit down and join him.
I sit down and join him.
He does not offer you a drink.
Okay.
And he says, Detective Redding.
Mr. Crenshaw.
My old enemy.
What can I do for such a formidable opponent?
Well, I was hoping that we wouldn't be opponents today. I would like to enlist your services.
Can you afford them? It's going to really strain things. You're going to have to probably sell the bicycle.
No, remember, I'm just going to sell some of my Enron shares.
Right.
You're going to sell?
That's madness.
Yeah. No, I mean, Simon has lived pretty frugally. This isn't going to be pleasant financially, but unless this guy charges, rates that only millionaires could afford, then I think I should be fine, at least assuming this doesn't drag on for a very, very, very long time.
Well, and he says, we can get to the paperwork later if that's all right with you. We're both gentlemen.
Okay, well, but what does that mean if I don't sign you on as my attorney?
It's a gentleman's agreement. You just sign me on.
Yeah, I'm not.
He says, I can see that you're uncomfortable with this. Why don't I go get the paper to make you feel all nice and cozy?
Yeah, that'd be great, thanks.
And he goes to his desk drawer and rifles around, and then pulls out some forms and says, go ahead, sign these.
I read them first.
They say all the words you want them to.
Okay, great, then I'll sign it.
Excellent. Now that the paperwork's done, we're all safe. So, talk to me about your problem, detective.
Okay, and then just to save some time, I re-describe the events basically the exact same that I did to the editor at the Gazelle with the addendum that, and then I went and talked to the Gazelle about this. ...
So, do you talk about the Spooner house?
Yeah, I go through the entire scheme, the entire basically the whole week, because it's all related.
Gotcha. But you don't tell him about like what Tim did.
No, because I don't think that's. You're talking about Tim being in the house when it burned down?
Right.
No, because that has nothing to do with anything as far as I'm concerned with the investigation. I know he didn't burn it down.
Do you tell him that Tim was there when you investigated Donnelly's apartment?
Yes.
Okay. So he patiently listens to this whole story, raises his eyebrows when you say that you got the press involved, and says, "That seems unwise."
Yeah, I can see why you would say that. To sort of reiterate, I have it on good authority that these agents are here to shut things up.
And what authority would that be?
And I look pointedly at the paperwork that indicates attorney-client privilege, and I say, the chief. The chief said that is what he believes is going on.
And you trust the chief?
In matters like this, yes.
All right.
Which brings me to why I'm here, is because I'm pretty confident that what I've done is going to get me in a lot of trouble, hence requesting the service of a lawyer.
Oh, I imagine you'll be fired, at a minimum.
Yeah, entirely possible.
Well, I think divulging this information to the press may put the chief in a position where he has no choice but to fire you.
Right, yeah, I'm not disagreeing on this point.
Well, but you believe
I'm not trying to get representation to stop from getting fired. It's more that I want to not go to jail over it.
Oh, well, that I'm well equipped to handle, I think. So, you have not yet been summoned to talk to these agents?
Not yet. But I have not made myself available for it either.
At this point, your beeper goes off.
Okay.
And it's, you're supposed to call in to the station.
I'm summoning you to come in and talk to those agents.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, my beeper says what?
Your beeper just has a callback number for the station.
Well, speak of the devil, do you mind if I use your phone?
Go right ahead. Would you like me to step out?
No. And in fact, I'd like you to listen, since
all right.
I'm just going to have to repeat all this to you anyway. So I call the number, and I hold the phone in such a way that we can both hear it.
Okay. And someone picks up and says, Detective Redding, the chief's been trying to get a hold of you. I'll transfer you to him now.
All right.
And Chief picks up. Hello?
Chief, this is Simon.
Simon, there are a couple of people here who would like to speak to you. I need you at the station pronto.
Chief, if you don't mind my asking, who might those people be?
They are a pair of special agents from the FBI.
All right. And I look at my lawyer and say, I'll be right there.
And he hangs up.
Well, sorry to ruin your Sunday afternoon plans, but do you mind accompanying me?
He shrugs and says, why not?
All right. Then
and he puts his jacket on and gets his briefcase together and then accompanies you out the door. Says, I'll meet you there.
All right. Yep, I'm off to the station.
Okay. So, it's not long before you get there. The chief is waiting in the front with you and says, hey, Simon, the two agents are waiting in interview room 1 to speak to you. And he looks and says, I see you brought a lawyer.
I sure did.
All right. And what we discussed earlier?
What did we discuss earlier? And I give him a blank look.
He nods and says, right. And he looks at you and says, you should know that they interviewed your friend.
Which friend would that be?
How many do you have?
Not many. I'm not
Tim.
answering anyone's questions for them.
Tim Bars. They just got done interviewing him.
Okay.
He was forthcoming.
Sure. As well he should be.
Well, I sent him home. Anyway. Interview room 1.
All right. I'm on my way.
I'll be outside.
All right, and I'm going interrogation 1.
Okay. So, you walk in with Donald Crenshaw, and the 2 agents are sitting there. Again, it's a man and a woman, both dressed in dark suits, both very professional in their appearance. She has a pad of paper out in front of her. He's just sitting there, stone-faced. And they both gesture at the chairs across from them.
Okay, that's it.
She says, "Detective Redding, glad you could join us.
I just grunt.
We have a few questions for you." And she slides the same 2 photographs across to you and says, "Do you recognize these 2 men?"
I look at them because obviously it's the pictures that. So it's not the pictures I had. It's the official pictures, right? The ones
Right.
with the
You know, they're like standing, or they're sitting kind of sideways on the stool, like
it's like
2
official
hands on the
government
knee.
service photos.
Yes.
And I assume that Donald is not indicating that I should or shouldn't do anything.
Donald nods to you.
Yes, I do.
Where from?
Well, I understand that you've already spoken to Tim Bars, and he probably described the scene out in the.
We'd like to hear it
dig site.
from you, detective.
Okay,
From your point of view.
all right. Well, the first time I saw them was I got a security camera picture of them driving out of an evidence site for an investigation I was working on earlier this week. And I briefly described the Donnelly suicide case and the storage yard. And I don't go into detail about what was there, only that I had I had indicated that it was a crime scene, had put tape up, and then left and sent other people to go collect the evidence. I do not indicate what that evidence was.
We'll need that case file.
Simon would be more familiar with jurisdiction and stuff like that than me, so I don't know if I don't just give away case files, so unless they've got some sort of official requisition for it, then I don't have to do that. That's Shepard's understanding.
Are you
of this.
saying that to them?
Yeah, I'll ask, do you have some sort of mandate for collecting that?
You have asserted that an FBI, that several federal law enforcement agents have obstructed your investigation.
Correct.
We're here to clarify the matter. We need the details on the investigation.
Well, I'd love to see your paperwork to that effect.
Like our badges?
No, like the case assignment to you. You could be any random FBI agent that doesn't entitle you to my investigatory files without some sort of notice that you are investigating this in particular.
She looks at her partner, and he stands up and walks out of the room and says, "We'll get that to you straight away. Whatever
Great.
you need.
Thanks.
But we will need a copy of those case files.
I shrug.
And I'm not sure why you're so reticent to share."
I say nothing.
She shrugs and says, "Moving on. So, you've said that they interrupted some evidence collection.
Right.
What next? Did you encounter them again?"
I sure did. I was assigned to investigate I'm trying to think back for a second. I was assigned to investigate a disappearance out at a local dig site. And I briefly described the circumstances that led up to that. And then while I was at the dig site, these 2 fellas walked up, and I recognized them from the security footage that I described earlier. They attempted to convince me that they had jurisdiction over the area. I demonstrated to them that I knew that they were lying to me. They attempted to flee the scene. I pursued them. They ran off into the woods, and I, being in a car, just drove to secure their vehicle instead, because I assumed they were going to go back to it. That was the last time I saw them. The later report was that they returned to that crime scene and then disappeared into the woods, but I did not personally witness that.
I see. That will be all, Detective. Thank you.
Excellent.
And at that point, she'll stand up and walk out and open the door. And her partner is walking down the hall towards the room. And he says, "We're faxing the paperwork over right now."
Great. I'll wait.
She says, "Excellent. Detective, if you will accompany us to the fax machine, we'll show you our paperwork, and hopefully that will satisfy you, and we can get some copies of those files."
I summon the chief and my lawyer to examine them with me.
Your lawyer, Donald Crenshaw, says, "I'll leave you to handle this, and I'll be."
Okay, he's just leaving.
I'm not really qualified to, supervise you processing case material and hand it over to the FBI, but once you're done with them, I'll be sitting over there at that desk. You and I need to have a conversation.
Great. Okay, well then, hopefully the chief will help me make sure that this is legit.
So he moves off to the side. The chief comes with you. The paper is like finishing coming out of the fax machine. And you both look it over, and it looks like it's on the up and up. Like the FBI has been officially assigned to this, to aid local police in this matter. Like state authorities have signed off, and given that basically, given that the department was asserting that other federal authorities had overstepped or were part of the investigation, that's kind of the foot in the door that they needed to get involved. So the chief looks at you and says, "Detective, give a copy of the case file, everything we have."
Okay, I do so.
And he looks at you and says, "And a manifest or an inventory of what we have in evidence." And he looks at you pointedly.
Well, he is aware that I have hidden some of the evidence.
Yes, he is aware of that.
All right.
And he looks at you and says, make sure they have what they need.
Understood.
Uh-huh.
So I will give them the manifest of the evidence, but I will not. I will not give them. I will give them the Donnelly case box, which does not include the stuff that I hid under a fake case name.
Okay.
That clerk is there, and he's like, "Do you want the hidden stuff too?"
Yeah.
Okay. So you prepare all this stuff, and then once the agents have all this paperwork, they just leave.
Okay.
And the chief looks at you and says, "I think you'd better talk to your lawyer, and then when you're done, talk to me."
Great. So I'll go over and talk to Donald Crenshaw.
Yeah, so Donald Crenshaw is just sitting. You've got you don't have a proper office. You have a desk.
At my desk. Yeah.
And he's helped himself to some of the shitty police station coffee. And he looks at you and says, "Well, detective, do you believe they're going to find anything in that file that incriminates you?"
In that file? No.
He sort of grins at the way you qualified that response, and says, "All right, well, you have my number."
Thanks, Don. And I go to shake his hand.
He stands up and shakes it and says, "I don't know what arrangement you have with the chief, but if state or federal authorities pressure him about this newspaper thing, then it may be out of his hands.
Yep, no doubt.
And there's probably nothing I can do about that."
Yep, we'll see. Thanks.
He nods and walks away.
Okay, and then I'll go check on the chief.
All right. So the chief is sitting in his office, and he's got one of his pythons out, and he's just aiming it at the wall. And when you come in, he puts it down on his desk and says, "Detective, shut the door."
I do so.
So, what do you make of all this?
Well, I was expecting something slightly different from the agents. Now, I'm not saying that they are done with whatever it is that they are here to do, but I was expecting something a little more And I kind of raise my eyebrows and leave it at that.
He looks back at you and says, well, I don't think you're done here.
I don't either. Now, the problem is, and I look around and ensure that no one else is around, I may have tripped and fell when I was walking around earlier, and it's possible that some things fell out of my pocket that some people who like to, and I squint as I try to continue this analogy, people who gossip, perhaps, might have picked those things up, and my squint deepens.
And he like wiggles his eyebrows at you and he says, I see. Nice move. Off the record, of course.
Right.
He looks at you and he says, off the record, of course.
Mostly.
He says, what the fuck does that mean?
I shrug and indicate that I'm unwilling to provide any more information.
He says, God damn it, you go off the record with the press, but you clam up with me?
Apparently.
You may have fucked us. Get the fuck out of my office.
I do so.
Okay. And just like that, your Sunday night is yours again.
Sweet. I think I'm gonna go try and get a really nice dinner somewhere, because my life is about to get a lot worse, and now is the time for buoying my own morale.
Oh, where are you thinking? What kind of dinner do you have in mind?
Just like a nice steak dinner.
Okay. We gotta come up with a good steakhouse name.
Stella's.
Yeah, I bet. Steakhouse name. So it's probably, it's like, it should be Vizzini's.
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 Like the character from The Princess Bride. It's just
Right,
like,
that's what I was thinking.
It's like an Italian or Sicilian sounding name.
Vizzini's Char House.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go to Vizzini's, which is a Princess Bride themed restaurant. And you're like 8 Princess Buttercups deep.
I don't know what that means.
It's
Well,
probably
it's
a
a
really
Princess
aggressively
Bride.
sugary drink.
Yeah.
It's
You
one
have
of
to-
those things
yeah.
where like
It's like
you
a
drink
Shirley
one,
Temple.
you
Yeah.
drink one, and you're like, this is going to be the worst hangover
It's
of my
this
life.
cloyingly sweet floral drink.
Does it come in a fishbowl?
I'm gonna wait until I get home before I start drinking heavily. I'm just gonna have like a glass of wine with my
It's
steak
just a
dinner.
couple shots here, you know.
You order the biggest steak they have on the menu, which they call the rodent of unusual size.
Do they like kind of sculpt it, you know, make it look like a rat?
Well, it's not just that. It's every time the waiter like comes and you tell him you want something, he says, "As you wish."
Yeah, so I enjoy my nice steak dinner, and the mounting dread that I start to experience as I wonder if I might have taken things too far, and all of that. I let it just kind of simmer a little bit, and then once I get home, I drink very heavily so that I can fall asleep.
Nice. And what is Tim Bars up to tonight?
Tim is mostly just trying to get in touch with Simon so he can, like, he's like, I really want to be on the same page with where we're at here.
Would
I'm not
you have
answering
his,
anything.
Yeah,
Would
I know,
you
that's
have
the
his
problem.
beeper number?
Probably not, no.
All right.
His
Yeah,
beeper?
so I mean, you can like call his home phone, but yeah, he hasn't been picking up.
Yeah. There's like 17 messages when you get home. Yeah, I mean, barring that, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I'm not in jail. Things seem okay for now. I guess I'll just get ready for work tomorrow, and we'll see where this ends up.
Okay.
I'm hoping that like, even after all of this sort of stress today, what I have to look forward to is the glowing praise that will inevitably result from the report I put together.
Oh, true. Yeah, I mean, you'll be a rock star.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is a good place to end tonight's session. And by tonight, I mean this morning.